Hello and welcome, Fish here with another Essentials Guide to the DCS F18. And in this one we're going to look at the concept of on-speed. And we're approaching Larnaca Airport in Cyprus here. And it's a visual approach with no instrument aids. So the concept of on-speed is that we maintain a pitch angle throughout our approach to the runway, so that when we touch down at a specific pitch angle, and it's particularly important for the F18 for carrier operations because that angle gives the best chance of picking up a wire when the hook is down. So the symbology for showing that we're on speed is the donut on the left hand side of the hood there, and you can see the range of angles which leave us in the correct configuration are 7.4 to 8.8 degrees, as you can see in the diagram. So with that in mind, what happens is with flaps full and gear full, we adjust pitch using our trim button, and the flight control system attempts to maintain that pitch. Now, pitch will affect your descent rate, and once we have affected the descent rate, we need to compensate by adjusting the throttle. And it's a very marginal point that maintains that balance. So any significant adjustment in the throttle will either make us ascend very quickly or drop like a stone. So you'll see when we're configured and we are heading towards the threshold, we won't need to adjust the pitch control. We will be adjusting the yaw slightly in order to maintain alignment with the runway, but we will be adjusting, trimming up and down all the time our throttle in order to maintain a particular descent rate. So we're going to set ourselves up for 1200 feet on the approach, and we're going to start descending at approximately 5 miles from the runway. So I need to set up our waypoint, and we're going to set up our course line for the approach. And the transition from normal flight to on speed, it's important that you do this very gradually and you maintain control of the aircraft. And it's not something that I can explain in steps. It's something that you've got to try and do it. But basically, it's very minor movements. And what you need to be doing is you will be trimming using the stick, and you introduce trim using the trim button, and you ease off on the stick to compensate. So you let one take over and you ease off on the other. So with that in mind, let's now start the approach and on pause. And I'm going to put the gear down and the flaps down. And we can see the nose has tended to fall, so I'm pulling on the stick. Now you can see the staple. And what I normally do is, if I'm looking at the staple, if it's over the flight path marker, what I'll do is I'll pull on the trim button to bring it down, or I'll push on it to bring it up. Now at the moment I'm still pulling on the stick, you'll see that, and I haven't transitioned, so I'm going to start pulling a little bit on the trim and compensating for me pulling. So I'm going to let the stick off and use the trim. So now I'm off the trim. I've stopped trimming the pitch, and I'm now just using the trim button to push that staple up very gently, and I'm managing the speed. And you can see we're at stable flight now. So I'm going to now set our waypoint, and we can see we're 12 miles. And I'm going to manage our descent rate to bring us down to around 1200 feet AGL. And the way I do this, I drop the speed, drop the throttle a little bit, ever so slightly. And you can see when you adjust the speed, the trim goes slightly out of alignment, so you can compensate for that. So you can see there, the staple is a little bit high, so I'm going to pull on the stick to draw the staple down a little bit more. So 10 miles and 1370. and we've got good angle of attack. So the angle of attack should be somewhere between 7.4 and 8.8 is where the where we get the donut. I'm aligning now with the center of the runway, 1260 at 9.5 miles, 1230. So I'm going to push on the throttle a little bit more to stop the descent rate, and I'm going to continue into 5 miles. Now a visual cue here, because we have no ILS instruments at the end of the runway to assist us, a visual cue for me would be to put the end of the runway between the horizontal line on the hood and the -5 pitch line on the hood. That will give us a 2.5 degrees descent rate. So the idea is to bring the end of the runway between those two lines. You can see it'll get close to those lines as we get close to the 5 mile. And as soon as we do that, then we need to drop the flight path marker so it falls onto the end of the runway, and that leaves us configured. Then we're going to start looking at our descent rate and make sure we're around -500 feet per second, and this should be the close to the descent rate that we hit when we're landing. We don't want the descent rate to be too shallow, and this is part of the deck operations. So we're 6 miles now, and we can see the end of the runway is falling down closer to the -5 pitch line. In fact, our bank queue there is almost in our way, so 5.5 miles, and that's looking good now. So I'm going to drop the speed a little bit, let ourselves fall gradually, pushing the speed up, let our flight path marker fall onto the end of the runway. And now we're going to make an adjustment to the staple. Going to push it up just a little bit. And looking at the descent rate now, we're probably still a little bit too large, so I'm going to drop ourselves down to shallow that angle. So I'm going to drop down more quickly at the early phases, and then we're going to bring ourselves back up. So I'm letting us descend a little bit more while we're further out, so it gives us a shallower approach. So we're -680. Could do it a little bit more of that. Two miles now. And now we're going to put the flight path marker onto the end of the runway. And that's given us probably a little bit more shallow than we need to be. So I'm going to reduce the descent rate, and then I'm going to drop it. And last thing we need to do when we're touching down, just before touchdown, is to drop the speed back, and we're going to need to pull the stick because the ground effects will stop us from descending. So throttle back now, and hold the stick, and we're down. And in a carrier landing situation, we'd be pushing full throttle once we put the wheels down. So I hope you found this video useful and interesting, and feel free to like, dislike, comment and subscribe. And until the next time, this is Fish Out, and thank you for watching.